Hi, I'm Jeff.
And I'm Kevin.
I'm Andrew.
And I'm Wilkin.
And this is our presentation on terraforming. First of all, what is terraforming? Terraforming is the process of altering the ecosystem of a planet that is uninhabitable for humans to make it possible for the planet to support human life. This can be done by altering the planet's atmosphere, temperature, or other aspects of the planet. The idea of terraforming was first proposed by Carl Sagan in 1961. Sagan suggested seeding Venus with algae that would convert Venus's atmosphere to one that could support humans. Terraforming was first addressed by NASA in 1976 in a study that concluded that it was possible for Mars to be made into a habitable planet. In 1979, the first terraforming colloquium were organized, where several terraforming concepts were first conceived.
A planet capable of supporting life as we know it has several requirements. First, it must have a habitable temperature. Earth has an average temperature of 15 degrees Celsius, while Venus has an average temperature of 450 degrees Celsius, far too hot, and Mars at negative 63 degrees Celsius is presently too cold. Secondly, the atmosphere must contain breathable air, a gas consisting of about 4/5 nitrogen and 1/5 oxygen. Without this, most life as we know it will not be able to survive without artificial assistance. Liquid water is also required for life, but water in any state will do as it can be easily melted or condensed into a liquid. Since plants and animals have mostly adapted to a day and night cycle, it might throw off biological processes if these do not conform to the typical Earth cycle. And finally, some form of magnetic field is generally required in order to protect life from lethal solar radiation. Many planets are too hot to sustain life. This could be due to the proximity to its star or because of the greenhouse effect, which traps heat in the planet's atmosphere. One possibility to reduce a planet's temperature is to reduce how much direct sunlight it receives. This would require the use of a film called the solar shade placed between the planet and its star to scatter incoming light or deflect it slightly and slowly cool the planet. Likewise, a great number of reflectors could be placed in the atmosphere of the planet to reflect incoming light back into space. Other planets are too cold for life to survive. In contrast to the solar shades, giant orbital mirrors can be built to reflect more light toward the surface of the planet, thus warming it up. Other methods involve creating a greenhouse effect for the planet by building up its atmosphere. Humans already produce greenhouse gases, such as methane and carbon dioxide from factories, and by introducing these gases to the atmosphere works to trap solar radiation and heat the planet over many years. An atmosphere that allows humans and most animals to breathe unaided consists of about 21% oxygen. It's unlikely that other planets meet this requirement, so the atmospheric composition of a planet will have to be rebalanced in order to be terraformed. Most planets carry an abundance of hydrogen and oxygen, but what form they are found in varies. Some planets have a lot of water, but not breathable O2. Given a sufficient amount of electricity, water could be slowly decomposed into hydrogen and oxygen through a process called electrolysis, and eventually converted into breathable oxygen. Other planets, such as Mars, have a high amount of carbon dioxide. Bacteria and vegetation could be brought to the planet using photosynthesis to convert carbon dioxide into oxygen and slowly oxygenating the atmosphere the same way Earth's was billions of years ago. Another requirement for life is a source of liquid water. Fortunately, many planets within the habitable zone and beyond already contain abundant water, either in liquid form or frozen as ice at the poles or embedded in the surface. For these planets, meeting the temperature requirement will be sufficient in producing liquid water. For planets with a carbon dioxide surplus, hydrogen bombardment could be used, causing a chemical reaction called the Bosch reaction, which produces carbon and water from CO2 and hydrogen. Since water appears to be abundant, if it cannot be produced on a planet, it could be harvested from comets or other planets and moons and transported to the terraformed planet where it is needed.
The three major candidates for terraforming are Mars, which you can see in the middle, Venus to the right, and Saturn's moon Europa on the left. Mars is one of the most talked about planets when it comes to the search for extraterrestrial life. This is partly due to humanity's fascination with the planet being subject to many science fiction books and movies. But aside from that, Mars is the next planet away from Earth and is on the outer edge of our solar system's habitable zone. On top of that, we must consider the history of Mars. Many scientists believe that Mars used to be an Earth-like planet with an immense potential to support life, with liquid water and an atmosphere. They believe that three things influenced the change to what Mars is today. An atmosphere binding to the surface as CO2 binds with the surface rocks, forming carbonates where the water is present. A lack of magnetics, or a strong magnetosphere, which caused solar winds to kind of erode the atmosphere. And finally, a chain of asteroids impacts that could have kind of ejected the atmosphere into space between 4.1 and 3.8 billion years ago. Another promising fact is that Mars' atmosphere is very similar to that of Earth some billions of years ago, containing mostly carbon dioxide, but also some nitrogen, argon, and oxygen. Since the Earth was transformed from a similar atmospheric makeup to its current life-sustaining one, scientists believe this process may be replicated to achieve a similar result. Also, now there remains a large amount of frozen water in the ice caps below the surface of Mars. In fact, the water stored in the South Pole would, if melted, cover the planet with an ocean 11 kilometers deep. Terraforming Mars proposes two major challenges. First, it has an extremely low gravitational force compared to Earth. It's only about 38% of Earth's gravitational force. This could cause health problems associated with weightlessness. Second, we would have to figure out how to counteract the effects of having a weak magnetosphere, such as the intense weather, solar radiation, and solar wind. As mentioned before, Mars lacks a strong magnetosphere, and so it would be difficult to retain a thick atmosphere, as hydrogen would be able to escape into space. The planet's surface is also subject to solar winds due to this weak magnetosphere. And currently, we don't really have the technology to build a magnet strong enough to make an influence at such a large scale. Now we talk about terraforming Venus. You can see the image in the background is an artist's rendition of what possibly terraformed Venus would look like. You can see the blues and greens kind of similar to Earth. Venus's main problem is that it has an extremely dense carbon dioxide atmosphere, about 90 times the pressure of Earth's. This causes an intense greenhouse effect, pushing the surface temperatures to about 450 degrees Celsius, with little oxygen to breathe. Also, like Mars, there's no magnetosphere, not a strong magnetosphere to protect the planet from solar radiation and winds. The days are also extremely long, about 116 Earth days. First, in order to terraform Venus, first we must reduce the surface temperature of Venus. Second, we must reduce the dense CO2 atmosphere and make it a life-sustaining atmosphere, possibly by removing some CO2 or converting it into some more useful elements. Finally, we need to introduce breathable oxygen into the atmosphere. Right now, it's not possible to breathe the atmosphere. As mentioned, all these problems are kind of linked to this extremely dense carbon dioxide atmosphere. So if we could fix that, maybe the other problems would kind of go away on their own. So in order to do so, the first thing is that Venus gets about twice as much sunlight as Earth, which likely contributes to the runaway greenhouse effect. In order to prevent the planet from being reheated once terraformed, we would likely need to use some sort of insulation like solar shade, something to block a portion of the radiation and solar winds. Building such a physical object is pretty daunting. It would have to be 4 times the diameter of Venus. We could also use a solar shading technique by adding reflectors like balloons into the atmosphere. Another idea is to introduce a large amount of hydrogen into the atmosphere in hopes that it will react with the carbon dioxide to produce water and carbon molecules. In doing so, this would cause the planet to be about 70% covered by vast oceans from the newly formed water, and would also reduce the atmospheric pressure. That said, it would take about 4 times 10 to the 19th kilograms of hydrogen to accomplish this, which is pretty unreasonable. A final idea would be to actually try to remove some of the atmosphere. This could be achieved by possibly bombarding the planet with lots of meteors that could eject the atmosphere into space. That said, it would be difficult as it would likely be sucked in by Venus's gravity and once again become a part of the atmosphere. Also, it would be difficult to kind of plan bombarding the planet with lots of large meteors. Finally, we reach Europa. Europa is a really interesting candidate for the search for extraterrestrial life because It's covered in ice, whose smoothness seems to indicate that there's an ocean beneath it. It also has an atmosphere that consists of mostly oxygen. Thus, it has been regarded, along with Mars, as one of the greatest bodies in our solar system that could have life. However, terraforming Europa would be difficult in that it lies near a large radiation belt around Jupiter. This could, however, conceivably be overcome with two major changes. First, building some magnetosphere of some sort, which would need to be about half the strength of Earth's, and to establish an ozone layer to reduce any harmful radiation in this radiation belt. We would also need liquid water and breathable oxygen in order to live on Europa. This would require heating up the surface and increasing atmospheric pressure considerably. There are 3 steps in terraforming Europa, mainly building an atmosphere, keeping it warm, and keeping it from escaping. We need to increase the pressure because currently you cannot breathe on Europa. Either we would need to introduce new compounds or break its ice into its basic hydrogen and oxygen elements. One new compound we could introduce is ammonia, which is a greenhouse gas that would heat the planet quickly and also contains nitrogen, which could act as a buffer element in order for chemical reactions to take place. Methane could also be used as a greenhouse gas and can produce water and CO2, which is essential for photosynthesis. We would need to heat up the planet significantly as well, which would sublime the frozen carbon dioxide into its gaseous form, contributing to a greenhouse effect, and would further melt the surface ice to provide some surface water. It is thought that Europa may have volcanic vents in its subsurface oceans that can warm without sunlight. It is possible to harness the heat and bring it to the surface to heat up the atmosphere and even possibly cause rain. Another possibility is to direct meteors at this moon, releasing a thicker and oxygen atmosphere and releasing heat into the planet. Finally, Europa needs to be able to maintain the atmosphere. As with Mars, it lacks a significant magnetosphere that allows molecules to escape into space. This proves to be a significant challenge in terraforming Europa.
The habitable zone is the region around a star that is theoretically possible for a planet to maintain liquid water on its surface, given that it has sufficient atmosphere. Planets in this region will likely require the least amount of terraforming to become habitable. In our own solar system, this region extends from 0.95 AU to approximately 1.37 AU, putting Earth's orbit just inside the habitable zone and Mars' orbit just outside of it. The term extended habitable zone is designated to be the larger region in which the greenhouse gases can allow for liquid water on a planet's surface. Planets in the extended habitable zone can likely be terraformed to meet the required surface temperature for liquid water by altering the atmosphere with more greenhouse gases, which would in turn allow for more potential habitable planets for life. While planets within the habitable zone are prime candidates for harboring extraterrestrial life, it is also likely that life exists on bodies outside of the extended habitable zone. Due to the lack of energy provided by starlight, bodies that harbor life outside of the extended habitable zone would likely have an internal energy source to provide the correct temperature range and energy source for life. Possible internal energy sources include radioactive decay, tidal heating, or gravitational contraction. Examples of potential bodies harboring life outside of the extended habitable zone in our solar system include Europa and Titan.
It is likely that the endeavor of terraforming another planet to support human life will be extremely costly. Before any terraforming methods can be used, the technology to perform them must be developed, which will likely require very high costs for research and development. While it is possible that the resources gained by being able to access a new planet will outweigh the costs, the initial investment to terraform the planet is extremely costly. For example, it has been estimated that terraforming Mars will cost over $5 trillion. Terraforming also brings up several political issues. In 1967, the Outer Space Treaty was created. This treaty prevented any government from claiming the planet as their own, claiming space as the common heritage of mankind. However, any space object launched is owned by the state that launched it, which could be the cause of potential issues in the future. Also, terraforming is a massive project that will likely require the collaboration of several nations, which may be undermined by issues caused by rivalries or political issues between countries. This has been our presentation on terraforming. Here's our sources, and thanks for watching.